And don't forget what I said. This is human nature. I mean, they're no different than us. I mean, back in the day, we had slaves, and that didn't work out so well. So we had serfs, and those are people who had to till the land of a duke or an earl. And then we had indentured servants. My ancestors came here on a ship, and they had to work 8 years in Woodstock, Virginia, before they gained their freedom. And now we have a dying middle class because we're being crushed by debt, while the super rich are getting wealthier. And it's just human nature. You know, you believe that you got yours because you deserved it, you earned it, you owed it, and it had nothing to do with social infrastructure, education, support, people, family background, culture, luck, inheritance. But you see other people as leeches seeking a piece of what you earned. And almost everybody is susceptible to the notion that they're deserving and superior to others if they're given enormous power. And what they do with that power is they create a distance from ordinary society, and that allows them to feel different and deserving and not so guilty. And it allows them to do harm that they wouldn't otherwise do if they felt like they were part of a bigger society. And there are so many studies that support this kind of outlook on human nature. There's the Lucifer effect, Lord of the Flies, the Stanford experiment, the Emperor's Clothes. Children's books talk about it. This all documents aspects of this notion that given enormous power, we behave in ways that are reprehensible sometimes. And there are so many quotes that you have about this. Power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. Concentrated power has always been the enemy of liberty. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. I'm quoting conservative presidents here, Reagan and Eisenhower. Eisenhower taxed the rich up to 90%. He did not want to have a very small number of super powerful people like we have today. The conclusion then is the baby boomers are the first credit card generation. We could have stuff before we deserved it, and this caused an explosion in debt. And who took advantage of it? About 600 very wealthy families who always had a surplus, willing to loan, they just didn't want to be taxed. They loaned to a government, they didn't want to be taxed, and as a result we have this situation of enormous debt. They then take a greater share of the nation's wealth, constantly greater and greater. You know, you talk about the cost of Social Security. What about the interest on the debt? Who's that going to? That is an endowment that's going to the super rich. That's crazy. And then 3, a nation is well served by having a conservative party and a liberal party. And usually you want a country to be optimistic about its future. And a liberal party is optimistic. They borrow money, they build a bridge, and then they use increased tax revenue to pay for the bridge. And so the growth rate with Democrats has typically been about 4.3%. And with Republicans, it's been about 2.6%. But we need that too. We need periods of cooling off. We can't always be go, go, go. So it worked pretty well until Reagan, when he figured out that, you know, people don't care about debt. Go for it. It'll get you elected. And this was the big shift in our culture. The baby boomers, the Reagan generation. The fixed draconian solutions, it's going to really hurt. We've just let it go on for so long. Shrink the Department of Defense. We've got the drones. We've got very skilled Navy SEALs and Special Forces and Green Berets and people who are very skilled in dealing with the type of threats we have today. It doesn't take giant aircraft carriers and huge armies. Let's get more technical. Let's get more skilled. Let's get more deadly. And we can do this at much, much reduced cost. Number 2, tell the baby boomers not to retire. Social Security was never meant to be a 25-year vacation. That's not what it was designed to be. So baby boomers, don't retire until you're 70, 75, whatever. Medicare for all. Medicare expenses have been growing, inflation and healthcare costs have been growing at a much slower rate than for-profit healthcare. So much of your healthcare dollar goes into profits and claims processors who are trying to reject your claim. And that's not part of the rest of the world. They all have systems of healthcare that aren't for profit. We need Medicare for all. It'll save hundreds of billions of dollars, make our system so much more efficient. Number 4, sell off the post office. Post office was created by our founding fathers to be the primary source of communication. It's not that anymore. It's a package delivery service. It's competing against UPS and FedEx, but it has its hands tied behind the back because it's being politicized constantly by the government. They couldn't raise the price of stamps. This is all politicized. 95% of the deliveries by postal service are commercial. It's not you. You, the taxpayer, are funding a commercial operation. Now let's just auction off those hundreds of billions of dollars worth of property, give postal workers a real career, and be done with it. Europe, within a couple of years, will have a privatized postal service, a package delivery service. Number 5, tax the wealth. Get rid of the regulations that stop us from knowing where the wealth is, who has it. Why is $325 billion coming in from the Cayman Islands? That was probably money that should have been taxed. Number 6, break up the banks and the energy companies. The problem with having massive companies, it is the end game for capitalism. I am a capitalist. I believe in free enterprise. I believe in entrepreneurship. Capitalism works under the umbrella of government regulation. If somebody wins the game's over, and you have monopolies and plutocracies, and we're very close to that. And you can see the effect when one bank, Lehman Brothers, goes under. It's so huge, the bankruptcy far greater than Enron, that it takes down the world economy. Do you want that? No. Let's break up the banks. Let's give young people the opportunity to run a bank, run their own business. Break up the energy companies. We can't have a small group of companies putting the whole world economy at risk. We need trust busters. We had the guts to do it 100 years ago. We have to do it again, or we're going to have depressions that are unimaginable in the not-so-distant future. And this is going to create a lot of unemployed. The post office, the Medicare, the Department of Defense will have unemployed. We need to retrain people to have meaningful work, meaningful jobs. We need more skilled workers in healthcare. We need more skilled plumbers and carpenters. We need people to rebuild the infrastructure of this country, and it's going to take education dollars. This is a draconian solution, but that's where we're at. But it's not possible with our current government. The baby boomer generation is the first generation to not amend the Constitution. They think it came down from heaven and it's part of the Bible. I'm sorry, it's not. The Constitution was originally written by James Madison, did it over a summer. He was 33 years old at the time, and it was designed for change. Baby boomers are so afraid of changing the Constitution, like a bolt of lightning, so it'll come down from heaven. I'm sorry. We need amendments to the Constitution. Number 1, we need to be able to legalize national referendums. We're about the only country where people can't vote on ideas and issues. The only thing we get to vote on are corrupt politicians wallowing in bribes who break all their promises. We need to vote on issues. Number 2, criminalize lobbying money. I realize lobbyists do some good. They do provide some slanted information, whether it's a labor union or the Chamber of Commerce. They do provide some good. Just get rid of the money side of it. Don't allow them to monetize this process. Number 3, criminalize campaign contributions. They're just bribes. Other countries look at us like we're ridiculous. $2 billion to elect a president this year? $2 billion? That's more than the economy of some small countries, and the person who wins gets a $400,000 a year job. It is embarrassing. It's globally embarrassing. We need 60 days to figure out who we want to elect. We don't need a year of sound bites and distortions. It's over. It's been shown that it's not working anymore. We need public funding of campaigns. And then get rid of this massive, massive congressional staff budget. Most of the people don't know this. Both Democrats and Republicans are scared to death that this will become an issue. Why? Because they have a $4.4 billion budget, and it has doubled in 5 years. Doubled. It used to be $2 billion. Imagine a town of 535 people with $4 billion to blow. It's going to cause a lot of trouble. And Congress is causing too much trouble right now, and they're not making any headway. It's way too much money. Cut their staff budget. And then number 5, term limits. A maximum of 12 years. Congress, as designed by our founding fathers, was meant to be a place where patriotic volunteers went to serve their country. 12 years service is enough. Thank you. Be gone. We don't need 20, 30, 40 years and you retiring at a very old age with millions of dollars and far more influence than you were ever meant to have for the districts that you serve. Now, the epilogue to all this is it's a global problem. Why? Because I'm talking about human nature. The super rich are not something new. I mean, it's been around forever. The Swiss Federal Institute of Technology says there's about 147 companies that control everything in the world today. And Citizens United, the decision by the Supreme Court that corporations are people, means that some of these 147 international companies are American companies. In other words, they are making more money, companies like Microsoft, they're making more money offshore than they are in the United States, yet we're allowing them to make unlimited contributions to influence our country, yet their interests are global. Microsoft, can be argued, has as much interest in India as the United States. Are we going to allow them to control our political process? And an example of what's happening globally is the fact there has been an explosion of billionaires. Maybe that sounds like a good thing to you, but it's not. We had 20 billionaires in 1986. In 2010, we had over 1,000. China has more than anywhere else in the world. And China, a couple of years ago, had over 17,000 instances of civil unrest. Do you want that for the United States? China has too many billionaires in proportion to the rest of their population and the wealth of the rest of their population. And as a result, they have a lot of civil unrest, which they crush. I don't want that for us. So why do people aspire to be super rich? And it's been a mystery to me because it doesn't create happiness. All the studies show that over $100,000, most families aren't made happier by having $200,000 or $200 million or $2 billion. So it's not happiness. I think it's immortality. I think people want to be super rich just so they can build huge structures and put their names on it. I think that the Trump Tower and the Trump Casino have more to do with the man's ego than his sense of happiness. It's his fear of death. At least now he's going to leave behind massive casinos and hotels and things like that. And I think we're all susceptible to that. But it's futile. Super rich wind up just like the rest of us. And this poem kind of summarizes. My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair. Nothing beside remains. Round the decay of that colossal wreck, boundless and bare, the lone and level sands stretch far away. It's futile. We don't need a class of super rich people. We don't need royalty. And it's time for a second American Revolution. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please share it. I would like this to become part of our national debate. I really doubt if it's going to have any influence at all. But we can always hope, can't we?